Good morning, everyone. Councilman Rasmussen here, coming to you with my update from the October 18th, 2022 council meeting last night. It was a long meeting. We didn't get out of there until I think 9:30 or so, but there was some great information shared, and I'll do a quick overview of, or at least somewhat quick overview of what that was. So first and foremost, just basic updates from council members and folks. The switch to the Munis system is still going forward. So we got a little bit of update of what that looks like. We did get an update on some of the projects downtown. Most people have probably by now seen the parking lot project that's going on behind the old school district administration building on Main Street. That is moving along nicely. It will likely, if the weather cooperates this week, it's not too hot, they're hoping to have most of the paving done there this week, and we'll be scheduling a grand opening for it. It's a lot of new parking for downtown businesses, new parking for the Health and Wellness Center, so a big parking lot improvement happening right down there that I think folks are happy to see. Another thing that makes a lot of people happy, especially who are in the South Main Street area, is that finally Verizon, a year and a half after they were supposed to have done it, has gotten down all of their lines, and the utility poles have all been removed. There's still a little bit of touch-up work to do to fix the sidewalks where the utility poles were set so that everything looks good, but almost finally done after waiting for more than a year for them to take down their lines. Almost done with that South Main Street portion of the project. So it looks a lot nicer if you're driving down Main Street now. No power lines stringing over your head everywhere. Nice aesthetic improvement to the downtown. So good things there. We did hear a little kind of quick update. The police department is running their summer police academy, their youth academy. They'll be wrapping up the end of the week. So there's, if you have seen any of that, it's kind of a cool opportunity for high school age kids to come out, get involved, learn a little bit more about the police department. And they'll be having a cool little graduation ceremony coming up there. Those are the main things that were on the like updates. As far as the agenda items go, we had a couple of things. We actually had a public meeting ahead of time to hear a little bit about a few of these as well. On the old business side, last council meeting, we started a discussion about creating what are called accessory dwelling structures. This is folks who might want to convert a garage or a shed or something like that into a dwelling unit. And there are requirements about what that means. It means it has to have a bathroom, it has to have a functioning kitchen, it has to have a bedroom. This is something happening all over the country. It's something that actually AARP is pushing a lot because of the idea of being able to create more spaces where older members of family can age in place rather than having to go into very expensive assisted living. So the council talked about it a little bit last time. We had another conversation about it. The idea that we came with is to direct the Planning and Zoning Commission to move forward, coming up with a proposal that we think allows this to happen, but does so in a way that puts some reasonable restrictions on it. Things like the owner of the property needs to live in either the current house or in the accessory dwelling unit, so that it doesn't turn into just absentee renters. We have already plenty of problems with landlords who don't live here, who don't take care of their properties and don't care what happens there. So we want to prevent things like that, placing some reasonable size limitations on it so you don't try and build like a 2-bedroom house in a shed or something. That really getting at the intent of these, which is to allow family members a place to live on your property. It might be a garage, it might be a basement, it might be an accessory building or an attached building. Things like that. So we should see probably within a couple of months something come forward. We've already gotten requests from community members about this. I think we'd like to get out ahead of it and create something that allows this to happen in our community, but does so in a way that we think doesn't create additional issues down the road. So that's going to move forward. The two major discussion items on the agenda last night were both having to do with updates to the zoning and land use code requirements. The existing zoning code for a lot of our site plans dates back to about 1964. and little changes have been made to it, but realistically, it doesn't necessarily reflect the best practices and how we currently operate when we look at site plan approvals, what that process moves through, the level of engagement from the town staff, from council, from the Planning and Zoning Commission. So what we did was, and I say we, the Planning and Zoning Commission, Jeremy Rothwell, George DeBenedictis, the Planning Inspections Office, they did the lion's work on all of this to really go through that and make some very serious updates to those pieces of code to bring them back to, or bring them up to reflect how we currently operate and what best practices currently are versus what they were in 1964 when a lot of this was drafted. Operationally, this doesn't mean that much, except for most people, maybe if you're building a very large development or something like that, there is a bit of a more codified process for what the land use, the planning process will be, what things have to, pre-meetings, and when permits are submitted, when does council get to vote on it, things like that. Creating a technical advisory committee of town and community groups, so the police station, the ambulance station, the fire station, the school district, all the people who would be wanting to know of and have some input into a large-scale development. So we've codified that in code. That was mostly technical stuff around those, like how we operate type of details. We had another piece which was around the subdivision and land development ordinances. This one has a little bit more impact on your day-to-day community members, and specifically on the requirements around developers. So this was updated back around 2001 last, but we found the town staff, not me, in the implementation of this code has been very problematic because it was not detailed in the places where it probably needed to be detailed. What this meant is that we had a number of developers who, between 2001 and the late aughts, when most development sort of stopped, who got approved for subdivision, requires them to complete their work. We use bonding. Oh, sorry about that. I guess I lost signal for a minute there. So I hope that the video is still, it says it's still going. There might be a little gap there for people who are watching it. The bonding process is how the town holds developers accountable to finish their projects and like get the final top coat done on the road. All of that needs to be done to hand it over. The previous code allowed developers to move on to additional stages of their project without actually finishing some parts. And some developers are fine and they get their work done, others are not, and they took advantage of this. So we went back and did a pretty large update to the bonding requirements, to open space requirements, to re-subdivision requirements that better reflect the kind of character that we would like to see in the community in these subdevelopments. It will largely impact new developments. There are, unless a development is still only a small portion of it is done, there's very little that we can do to go back and fix, say if there were issues in I know Worthington is one that comes up, or Lake Como Woods is one that comes up, because the developers have not lived up to what they were supposed to do or what they sold people on. It's very difficult for us to go back and make changes to those because the agreements that were entered into when those were approved are binding. But for developments coming forward, or if there's a re-subdivision plan for a second part of a development or something that comes forward, it gives us a lot more opportunity and ability to make changes to what that looks like, and ideally make sure that developers deliver a better product for members of our community. And a lot of the new potential subdivisions, the big subdivisions that would be on the south part of town or the north part of town, we've actually already changed those. We're requiring those to be our planned village community zoning, which already includes all of this type of information. So this is a solution for some of those places that have not been finished. And if there's new things that come along that would fall underneath this zoning code, we now have a much better code to reflect the actual needs and character for those developments that we would like to see, and to make sure that the town gets what we are supposed to get from developers without being sort of left holding the bag, as has happened a few times. that was most of the conversation last night. Couple of other little things. We did the final authorizations for issuance of up to $10 million in bonds to finance about $10 million in municipal water and sewer infrastructure projects that are coming down the pipe. I've mentioned this before. There's a whole process now. Today we actually have a call with Moody's to get our bond rating. Then there's a process to issue the bonds, get them sold. Eventually those funds will come back to the town, and that we can begin to do the final engineering, the planning, and bid process for some of these big projects. A lot of stuff here. There's a lot of moving pieces. Obviously, it's always tricky when the town takes on new debt in order to go out and create some of these projects. We have to make sure that we can pay that debt back mostly. That's the biggest piece. And so a lot of the rate study that I talked about last time around updating our water, sewer, and electric rates and making sure that our user fees match up to this. Another piece of that is making sure that we put about 4% of that money into a pot to cover infrastructure projects like this. So that could be paying down the debt that we currently have on infrastructure projects. Ideally, it means in the long term we build up a pool of money so that if there's an emergency or a large project, we do not have to go out and borrow as much money in order to complete these kind of projects. It's long-term planning. It means work on the front end and headaches in balancing how this all works out. But in the end, I think we've made a lot of smart decisions about how we do large-scale infrastructure planning, how we are allocating some of these funds to make sure that we're actually thinking a few years out rather than just reacting when there's an emergency or when we absolutely need to get something done because of a requirement or something like that. So we issued the bond for that. We did an issuance rewarding a contract to, I'm going to brutalize it, it's Instuforms for what we call the next phase of the East Commerce Project. This is phase 2. The East Commerce Project is really fixing a lot of the sewer and water infrastructure flowing into East Commerce Street and on East Commerce Street as it goes down to Locust Street, where we had the big problem last year with the sewer main break that shut down that street for a while and created a lot of problems. So Instuforms is a company that are actually they're going to actually add a lining. Rather than excavating all of the streets like we've had to do in the past, the piping that is there, they can actually add a lining inside of it, another pipe basically pushed into it, that will extend its life and save a couple $1 million on the overall project cost. So it's a technology that's out there. It doesn't always work. The pipes have to be in a certain condition for everything to work correctly, but in the end this ultimately will do that. So this is a section where they are going to be flowing into East Commerce Street, and it's a project of about $673,000. So we awarded that contract last night. The other big news, so getting out ahead of things this year, we have set the dates actually for Smyrna at Night for next year. Hopefully folks still remember and had a great time this year for Smyrna at Night. The council and the town wanted to get out ahead of this as much as possible to, one, give us the opportunity to raise additional funding, find more sponsors, things like that, so that we can offset some of the town costs for 2023. So we've already set the dates. You can put it on your calendar right now. Saturday, June 17th, 2023, it's going to be the big Smyrna at Night Festival downtown. We're also going to be doing the First Friday events in May, June, July, August, and September next year. That's going to be the first Friday of each one of those months. We did finally also got the final update on sort of what the overall cost for Smyrna Night is. This is something the town puts on. It's paid for from the general fund in the town, so taxes and fees all fund all this. We had a budget for this year of about, I believe it was about $74,000 was the expected budget, or $78,000 was the expected budget. We actually came in under budget, which is awesome. Total expenses were just about under $69,000 to put on all of this stuff, and we actually offset it with about 20. or $39,000 or so worth of sponsorships. So ideally, we move forward as early as possible. We try and line up as many sponsors and fees as we can, and we can offset even more of this in coming years. So it's a great event. It takes a ton of work, awesome effort on the part of the town staff, the police department, Public Works, everybody that put in a ton of effort. And ideally, it'll keep getting bigger and better every year. So those are the big things that were on the agenda last night, the discussion items. There's a few other little pieces that were things that were sort of tabled or moved forward because we were running very, very late. So there's a couple of items that we're going to be talking about in other meetings. But so, as always, happy to answer any questions or comments. Reach out to me here or reach out to me directly if you'd like to know anything more about this. Always happy to provide you what information I can. Hope that everyone is going to stay cool this week because it seems like summer is going to hit us. I'm taking my children off for a 10-day road trip up to New England where it will be a little bit cooler, fortunately for us. But hope all is well, and we'll see you after the next council meeting.